Thanks for joining us. We have kind of a small group today, but so feel free to jump in, unmute yourselves, jump in, ask questions as we go along. And I don't have any formal presentations, don't have any PowerPoints, but I have a couple things I wanted to bring up that have come up in the last probably 2 months that were interesting to say the least, and how they were handled. And feel free to share your experiences as we go along. But a couple of months ago, I started getting phone calls from several systems up here in Northeast Missouri. And it seems that there was a fellow, and my understanding is he was from Illinois. He wasn't even from Missouri. And he walked into a couple of offices. Now, one was a health department, and then a couple of sheriff's departments. None of them were cities or water districts, but still public governmental offices, right? And he walked in with had a vest on with a recording device in it. He video recorded his encounter. And he walked into the building filming, okay? And he never gave his name, refused to give his name, said he was let me get this right, he was a public access auditor, is what he called himself. And he walked in and at the health department and asked for an information request form and an employee complaint form. And so the lady at the front desk went and got somebody else, and they came out and kind of started questioning him and who he was and what he wanted. It told him he couldn't record, should turn off the recording. He informed them that he was not required. He could record in a public place. She went back and got another lady who came up, told him he couldn't record. He needed to stop recording. Eventually, the sheriff's department showed up. Two deputies from the sheriff's department showed up. And he was there a total of probably 20-25 minutes. So when this word got around that this guy was doing this, I started getting phone calls from clerks. What happens if this guy walks into our office? Okay. And actually, you can go to YouTube and see his videos, okay? If you go to YouTube and you search for Citizen Standpoint News is their channel, Citizen Standpoint News. Just look at the ones that were in Missouri. He went to several, like I said, he went to, I know, a health department and a couple of sheriff's departments. Okay. And he never, in this incident, if you look at it, he never got out of line, as far as never raised his voice. He did stand his ground. But my point when I got the calls was, in my opinion, they handled it completely incorrectly. Okay, so what happens when somebody like that walks into your office? Right? What do you do? Okay, that was the question I would get. So, so a couple of things I want to let you know. Number one, when they walk into a public building like your office, city hall, water district office, they can record, and they don't need your permission to record. Okay, they can video record, they can voice record. Okay. As long as they don't get into the way of you doing your business, right? Like they can't get right up in your face and put their phone or the recording microphone up in your face to grab every word, right? But if they're standing there talking to you, they can record that, okay? That is true for a meeting also. If you have a council meeting or a board meeting and someone comes to the meeting and sits there with their cell phone and turns on their cell phone and starts recording you, there's nothing you can do to stop that. That's allowed, okay? That's under the law, they can do that. So when they confronted him about the recording, number one, that was, they weren't going to win that battle because you can do that, okay? The other thing that was concerning to me was he came in and his original ask was, can I get an information request form? They didn't know what he was talking about. Okay. He basically asked for a sunshine request form. He was asking for sunshine records, right? And he wanted a form to fill out his request. When they finally figured that out, and it took them probably 10 or 15 minutes. Actually, it was when the sheriff's deputy showed up and he said, I want an information request form. And the guy said, I think you guys in Missouri call it a sunshine request. He goes, oh, you want a sunshine request? Yeah. Okay. The office didn't have a form for him. Okay. Now, understand, under Missouri law, you're not required to have a form, but it is strongly recommended that you have a form, that when somebody like that walks in, you hand them the form and say, here you go. Okay. The Attorney General's website, ago.mo.gov. If you go there and go to laws and look up sunshine law, they will have form templates. Okay. And they have one for a records request. And you can devise your own request form, and they give you recommended questions to put on this form, okay, to ask. So I strongly recommend, when somebody like this walks in, have a form, and whoever is at the front desk, it doesn't have to be your custodian of records necessarily, because most of you probably are your custodian of records, right? They're gonna come in and see you, but you know, have the form ready and say, here you go. When you fill that out, this guy, when they asked him who he was, he would never give his name or any identifying information. He would just say, I'm a public access auditor and I have every right to be here. That's all he'd tell him. But on the form, right, it asks for name and address. So they mishandled it in that they didn't have a form for him. They finally came back, and a couple minutes later, I'm going to say 5 or 10 minutes later, came out from the back office that somebody had printed off a form and handed it to him, but they didn't have it ready. Okay. The staff basically didn't know how to react, and they took a defensive attitude immediately. And there were probably 3 different ladies that interacted with this guy, right? So he's filming the whole time. The sheriff's department shows up, and he finally got his form. He also asked for an employee complaint form. Now that's not required. He basically wanted to make a complaint about the employees, and he asked if they had a form to do that. They said, no, if you want to make a complaint, you've got to call and talk to the manager, whoever, and that's fine. Okay. You're not required to have an employee complaint form. You're not even required to have a customer complaint form, although DNR kind of wants you to have that, but it's not required. But the sunshine request form, they should have had, okay, and should have handed it to him. If they handed it to him, and he says this in his audio, in his video, if you just handed me the forms, I would have left. And instead, it turned into a 25-minute confrontation, okay? So have the form, okay? But it's interesting, if you go to YouTube, look at that interaction. So I got a copy of that, and I was asked what my opinion of that was. And I says, well, it made the public employees look incompetent, is what it did, okay? It made them look unprofessional. And if you look at the comments that were provided under the video, you know, you can go see comments. Most of the comments were critical and to the point of, what are they trying to hide? Okay. And I don't think they were trying to hide anything. They didn't know what to do because they weren't informed of the law. Okay. So the thing to remember is, be trained, know the law, have the forms ready, be able to contradict what people tell you. Sunshine law is one of the most misunderstood laws by the public and public entities, I think, in the state. And people will use it to beat you over the head with, okay? And so anybody that has contact with the public in your office needs to know the sunshine law, right? So you can ask them to fill out a form. They're not required to, okay? But you can ask them to. And what I tell people is if they refuse to fill out the form, you fill out the form in front of them, okay? The form should ask their name, name and contact information, whether they want an email or a mailing address or whatever, right? Get some contact information. It should ask in detail, what are you seeking? It should state that you're going to, if you charge for copies, and I recommend that you do, that you will charge for these documents. And the other thing we recommend that the Attorney General says you can do is you require them to make a deposit up front before you do any work. Okay. And with a statement that if you owe more when you come pick up or when the documents are delivered, then you'll pay the balance. If you've paid too much, we'll refund the difference, right? But make them pay the fee, okay? And they can request a waiver, but you don't have to grant it, okay? So this guy really caught them flat-footed, and it made them look bad. And some people took it as, well, look at those government employees. They're trying to hide stuff from us. How dare they, right? And that wasn't the case at all. So it made them look very, very unprofessional, okay? So know the law. Have your forms ready. Everybody needs to be trained on that. And who is the person that's going to probably run into this guy first? Because it happens. Act professionally. This guy never raised his voice. He never he never got out of line, really. He knew what he was asking for, and he knew enough about the law to keep it legit. The office didn't know much about the law. They didn't know how to come back at him, right? Or to conduct the transaction professionally. So, okay. So have your forms ready, act professionally. But go to YouTube and look at that encounter. You can see how they did it wrong, okay? And in this day and age, and I don't know if this is because people are looking for things to do during COVID, they don't have anything better to do, but this was in a tiny, tiny little bitty town of less than 100 people. It was the county seat is where it happened. The town itself is like 90 people, okay? So don't think it can't happen to you out there in the middle of nowhere, because it can, okay? So just be prepared to ask that. I do a lot of training on sunshine law, okay? And if you haven't been to my class, I recommend that next time you see it, get some training on it, okay? Your board members the same way. Everybody needs to know basics about the sunshine law, right? Because the public thinks they know a lot, and they really don't, okay? So that was interesting. That I got probably 3 other phone calls from cities and water districts in that area saying, what do I do if this guy walks in? I said, have your form and hand it to him. Then he'll leave, okay? If he wants the information right when he walks in the door, then you tell him, no, that's not what the law requires. The law says you have to respond to his request within 3 business days. If he fills the form out and hands it to you, say, okay, thank you. We've received your request. We will get back with you as soon as we have these, we locate these documents and have them ready. That is your response. And it was made within 72 hours, okay? I don't know that he would have demanded that because they never got to that point. Once he got the form, he did leave. But most people, a lot of the public thinks that once you've got the sunshine law request, you have to give them the information within 3 days. That's not true. You have to respond to the request within 3 days, okay? It may take you a month to get all the information they need put together, okay? But you have to respond within 3 days, okay? So know the law, have the forms ready. Don't, and I would guess the thing is with these like YouTube people, and I don't know how this works. Some of you may be a little more tech savvy than I am, but if they can get enough views on YouTube with this kind of stuff, they can monetize it, right? And they can make money. So if they don't get a reaction out of you you know, like they did in this office. Probably not going to end up on YouTube because it's not going to generate any views. Thus, it's not going to turn into money for them. Okay. So know your stuff. That's my advice here is know your stuff. Okay. Anybody have any experiences like that? People walk in demanding information. Has anybody? No, I'm seeing head shaking. No. Well, be prepared because it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Okay. And it may be over the phone. So one thing you are required to have under sunshine law, if you don't have it already, cities used to have an ordinance, water districts should have a resolution that sets forth who your custodian of records is, either by position or by name, and whether you're going to charge for it, charge for the records. The law sets forth what you can charge. You don't get to pick the amount you're going to charge for it. It sets forth what you can charge, and whether you're going to make them pay up front. You need to have an ordinance or a policy in place that sets this all out. Okay. And if you, again, I think the Attorney General's website has a sample ordinance that you can use to do that. So make sure you've got all of that in place. Okay. So the other question I get too, and again, feel free to jump in, is can somebody walk into our board meeting and start recording it? And I've had several people where they've walked in, did a Facebook live stream of the board meeting from the audience. Can they do that? Yes, they can. Okay. And as long as they're not disrupting the meeting, there's not anything you can do to stop it. Okay. So they can record it and they can broadcast it. And Facebook Live seems to be a favorite tool to do that. Okay. What I've watched a couple of those, and the comments we get back that you get back are, I've seen 2 council meetings and 1 water district board meeting where this was done. And the comments from the people watching are, this is great. I love this because I don't have to leave my house to see what the city council's doing or what the city council is up to. Okay. And so with this being so easy, I can see this being a growing trend, if you will. So when you have a meeting, be aware, and this is something your board members need to be aware of. Be aware that you can, and they don't have to tell you they're doing this. They can come in and record and they don't have to get your permission. Okay. So they can do this, they can broadcast it. Your board and the staff that are attending the meeting need to be, you just assume you're being recorded and act accordingly. Okay. Be careful what you say. Make sure you stick to business. Don't offer any personal observations about people, situations, et cetera, right? That's what they're looking for, okay? You don't want to do that. And I was watching one board meeting. They actually had a board meeting, but they didn't have a quorum. So they continued with the board meeting instead of just adjourning and going home. They continued to have the board meeting even though they didn't have quorum present. So any decisions that were made, I don't know that they made any. I don't think they actually formally voted on anything, but they discussed a lot of stuff. Not good idea. Okay. So just be aware that stuff can get you in trouble, and the board and the district or the city. Okay. There was one meeting where the lady that was doing the recording actually said, I'd asked for a copy of the minutes and was not given the minutes, and I want to know why. And the board president, actually it was the mayor, said, well, they were just draft minutes, so we don't let those go out of the office until they've been approved by the board. That was a wrong answer. Draft minutes are a public document. They should have handed them to her immediately. Okay. So again, here's our elected official that wasn't knowledgeable, okay, on some basic, and that was sunshine law there, but basic stuff, Okay, so it just need to be aware that it's really easy to start recording this stuff and broadcasting it now with all of our smartphones and that type of thing. Okay. Does anybody here have anybody that walks into your board meetings and starts recording? Have you all ever had that happen? Again, I don't know that it's a matter of when, it's just, or if, it's a matter of when that could happen. Okay. So just be aware. Again, knowledge. Do you know the laws? Are your board members trained? Are they aware of what's going on? Okay. Critical, critical, critical. Okay. Another thing I've had is questions from clerks and staff about board members that tend to, I want to say go rogue, but think they can do things when they really can't. Okay. I get a lot of calls. Yeah, I'm seeing some heads going like this, right? I had, this has been several years ago, clerk, actually I've had a couple of these where the clerk called because a board member decided they wanted to change their vote on something that the board voted on. And the minutes had already been approved that recorded that vote, and they asked the clerk to change the minutes to show that they voted a different way. And I got a call. Well, I've gotten a couple of these. And the answer is no. Once the minutes have been approved, the minutes are approved and they're official and they're in stone. They cannot be changed. His option, or the board member's option, is to come to the next meeting and state for the record that I voted this way, but I've changed my mind and I want everybody to know that I no longer feel that way. Of course, that doesn't mean his vote changed. It doesn't change the outcome of the vote, but he can make it, or she can make it known that way and ask to put it in minutes. But you can't change the minutes once they've been approved. The only time you can do that is if they're draft, and you can say that was not recorded properly. We need to change. Even if he didn't like the way they voted, if he just wants to change his vote, that doesn't change his vote. You're not going to re-vote it. You have to record the way the vote happened. Okay. Now, if several other board members say, "Oh yeah, I know he voted the other way, the minutes are wrong," then that's fine. As a draft set of minutes, you can change it at that point, right? But you can't change the minutes once they've been approved. They're set in stone. They're done. Okay. You know, and I know that puts some of you in a bad position, but you can't do that. That's actually, that's messing with a legal document. So can't do that. Lots of calls about board members who call and want you to waive a late fee or not disconnect somebody because they told me that they would bring you a payment, you know, next week or whatever. The councilman doesn't have, or the board member doesn't have the authority to do that. You are bound by the city ordinance or the city or the district policy, and you have to enforce that. You don't get a say unless the board is giving you that authority. So, and again, that's hard to do, to confront a councilman or even a mayor. You don't have the authority to do that. Okay, they don't have the authority to do that. And you stand on the ordinance. Again, I know that's hard to do, easier said than done, but you know, that's technically and legally what you're required to do. Anybody got any situations on board members? What if some of your board members asked you to do? I have a quiet group today. We're going to be done early here. No. Okay. No questions. Gosh. Okay. So the next group we deal with is customers, right? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, really? Yeah. Um, that come in and want you to do special favors, or come in and start quoting, like you can't do that, it's against the law, right? I know you had that happen. Okay. Um, and a lot of times it's the same ones that you deal with month after month after month. Okay. So, couple of things that I found. One, they'll come in and threaten to sue you, or they'll say, I'm going to call my attorney. That's okay. Just say, well, you go ahead and do what you got to do. Okay. Don't let them, call your bluff there. Right. Just say you do what you feel like you can do. Um, Another one is they've done some searching on the internet, which can be dangerous. And they come back and they say, well, you can't disconnect me because the law says you have to give me 10 days of notice before, in writing, before you can disconnect my service, on and on and on. And the temperature is below 32 degrees, so you can't shut my water off, and on and on and on and on. Okay. Well, here's the deal with that, people. In Missouri, we basically have two types, I'm going to call them types of utilities, right? There's the publicly owned utilities, city water systems, sewer systems, water districts. You're publicly owned, you're owned by a political subdivision, right? And then there's private for-profit utilities, okay? Missouri American is a private for-profit utility company, okay? Liberty Utilities is a private for-profit utility company. Empire Gas, who are some other gas companies? KCP&L, okay? Ameren. Those are private for-profit utilities, and they are regulated by the Missouri Public Service Commission. Water district, your municipality, is not regulated by the Missouri Public Service Commission. For those regulated utilities, when anybody in Missouri talks about a regulated utility, they're talking about a Public Service Commission regulated utility, not some people will look at that and say regulated. Well, you're regulated by the Department of Natural Resources. That's true, you are. But in the statutes and in the regulations of Missouri, when they talk about a regulated utility, they're talking about a privately owned for-profit utility, okay? And they're regulated by the Missouri Public Service Commission. There is a whole set of regulations. I think it's in Chapter 4 of the Code of State Regulations that sets forth how they can do disconnects, what kind of, they do have to do notification 10 days or so many days prior to shut off. There's the hot weather rule, there's the cold weather rule, all of that stuff, okay? Those do not apply to publicly owned utilities, okay? Unless you have passed an ordinance or passed or adopted a policy that implements those for your utility, they do not apply to you, okay? So when somebody comes in January and says, you cannot shut off my water because of the cold weather rule, number one, the cold weather rule doesn't apply to water, period, even for regulated utilities. And number two, it doesn't apply to you because you're not a regulated utility, okay? So they will do their homework. They'll find this set of regulations where it says regulated utilities have to go through all these hoops, and they don't apply to you. Okay. I get this call probably 10 or 12 times a year saying somebody's walked in and says, we can't shut them off because we didn't give them notice, so they're going to sue. I said, well, you didn't have to give them notice. And they said, and I've even had attorneys ask me about this. Okay. So not all attorneys are even aware of this. Let's see if we got any attorneys on the call today. I hope not. But anyway, so it doesn't apply to you, right? So you can shut their water off for non-payment, period, or for violating your ordinances or your rules and regulations. You can shut them off as long as you have it in ordinance and you follow your ordinance or policy. If you're a water district, water districts don't have ordinances. but as long as you have that official, you need to follow your policies and procedures, okay? And you can do that. Now, if you don't have it in ordinance or you don't have it in policy, you're kind of skating on thin ice. You need to make sure all of that stuff is in policy, right? Or in ordinance. And then you give it. I had a highway patrolman call me one time. This is how far out of hand this can get. Had a highway patrolman investigator from the Highway Patrol Investigation Unit call me. There was a person, this was a small town, somebody had shut his water off. He filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office turned it over to the Highway Patrol for possible criminal investigation for turning this guy's water off. No kidding. Honest as serious as a heart attack here. And so in his investigation, the clerk told him, he called me and I asked him, which kind of scared me. I thought, oh heavens, what have I done to have an investigator call me from the Highway Patrol, right? I asked him, I said, how did you get my name? He said, well, the city clerk said that you told them that they could do this. I said, okay. I said, well, I probably did. So what had happened though, this guy, they shut this guy off for non-payment. He filed a complaint. The people in the Attorney General's office obviously weren't aware of how public utilities are operated, and turned it over to the Highway Patrol. The Highway Patrol started investigating. This guy did, got my name through the clerk. But the highway patrolman had done some investigation and come across the regulations that deal with regulated utilities and how you got to give them X number of days written notice before you shut them off, and on and on and on. And I stopped him right there. I said, no, that's not true. I said, the only thing that regulates them is the ordinance. I said, you've got to go back and ask her to see the ordinance. If the ordinance says they can shut him off, they can shut him off. Okay. By the time the conversation was done, this was about a 45-minute conversation with this guy. I had convinced him that the authority lies with the city council. They had every right to shut him off if the ordinance says they can. And the customer's recourse was to go to the city council. It was not to go to the Attorney General's office. I was kind of disappointed the Attorney General's office had referred it for criminal investigation. He was too. He thought it was a waste of his time, and it probably was. But just to show you how a small thing can get blown up way out of proportion, okay? Because people don't understand the law, okay? So understand that if somebody comes in and starts throwing those at you, they don't apply to you. You need to tell them those apply to private for-profit companies. That's not what we are. We don't have to follow that. Here's our ordinance. Do you know where your ordinance is? Or do you know where your policy is? Or offer, if you'd like to see the ordinance or you'd like to see our policy on this, here it is. That stuff should be in your water users agreement or utility agreement that the customer signs when they come and sign in for service. And I hope all of you have those. It should state clearly what the conditions are for, shut off, disconnection, or whatever. Refer them back to that. But again, it's a matter of knowing your ordinances or your policies, having the documentation, knowing where to find it, and looking professional. Because if you come across and that let you know your stuff, most of them will stop and say, well, obviously you guys know what you're doing. I'm not going to bother you, right? Or I'm not going to take it further. Now you always have the one that wants to push it as far as they can. And that's fine. The main thing is stay cool and calm and be able to answer their allegations or their questions professionally and with knowledge. Okay. And that's what we try to do. So, and then you have the people that come in, they're just totally irate, rant and rave, and dump on you. And you're probably not the person they're really mad at, but, you are the one that's on the receiving end. So again, it's hard to sit back and just let them vent, but sometimes you just got to let them vent and then say, sorry, but this is our policy. This is what I have to do. If you want to change that, you'll have to come to a board meeting. Okay. And I know that's very difficult to do, but again, hold your cool, and be firm in your knowledge, okay? But you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what your policies are, okay? I can't say that enough. I've said that a lot. I know you've all had customer interactions that are crazy. What was one of them that really kind of got to you? Anybody want to share an incident? Is anybody listening? Hello? Nobody's got a customer interaction they want to share? Let me ask you this. Something that may be an emerging thing. I don't know. I've had a couple of issues about it, but not a whole lot. But dealing with people who may be elderly, probably, that have a little maybe dementia setting on, and forget to pay their bill or pay their bill twice or 3 times in a month. Anybody seeing that trend or having any issues with it? And if so, what are you doing? How are you anticipating? I can see that being a problem going forward with some, especially the very small communities, maybe.
I've only had one where he's got dementia, and he would come like every week. And I knew him, so we just talked to him, say, hey, you've already paid. And he'd say, okay. And then finally his wife had to take over everything because he'd come almost every day.
Really? I want to pay the bill.
Yep. He's like, I forgot it. I hadn't got my bill in yet. And we're like, you've already paid, and just talk to him, and he'd just go on his way.
So he never got belligerent about it, or?
No, he'd just say, okay, I'm sorry, but other than that, he would just come in. We'd see him once a week sometimes.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
One of these that's not.
Anybody else? Have you thought about that situation, that kind of a situation, and how you would deal with it? Anybody? Nobody? Diane, I can't hear you. Are you trying to talk? No? Okay. Talking to some of them are putting, when they sign up, or if they come in, they will ask for an emergency contact, maybe, to put another person, not on the account per se, but maybe on the user's agreement, or at some point ask them to provide a close family member that they can put down as another contact, so that things start, like you said, the guy coming in every week trying to pay their bill, or they've been a customer for 40 years and never paid late, and now they've been late a couple of times in the last several months. Something's probably going on. Is there somebody on their record that you can call to talk about, that he's coming in every week to try to pay the bill? You need to be aware of that. So did you contact his wife to tell him that he was coming in every week, or?
No, we would just keep an eye on him, because he didn't have anybody living with him. And actually his ex-wife is the one that takes care of everything now. She stepped in and take care of them. Yeah. Because the kids would. Yeah. So she takes care of it now, and we tell her when she started taking over, and she's like, yeah, we knew he's getting bad, but we didn't know that bad. But now she comes in once a week or once a month and pays the bill for him.
Yeah. I see this as an emerging thing. maybe. So it's something you may want to have a discussion about, of having another contact on the file when stuff like that happens, especially your elderly, and if they live alone, that's um, uh, another concern. So, but we've been seeing a little bit of that going on in questioning. So, okay. All right.
I have a question. I've
Yes,
been
Karen?
in my role for now about 2 years, and as I'm pulling together policies and procedures and rules and regulations, does any district ever go through those or update them? Or I'm not even really sure how to get a handle around all of them. I, go through them as need arises and viewed them certainly, but do you normally do an update, or what do other districts do, or how do they handle that?
On your rules and regulations, is that what you're asking? Sure.
Policies and procedures,
Policies and procedures.
both.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody want to contribute? Is Boone 9 on? Roger, are you on?
On our procedures and policy, when we have board meetings, if something comes up, then they make the decision then, and we'll go change it, and then they'll approve it. They'll meet all again to approve it, and we'll put that in our new policies and procedures.
So you do it as you go along.
Yeah, if something comes up, that's when we address it, and then they talk about it and discuss it, and if they want to change it, then we change it, and then they all sign off on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the best way to do it. The problem is if it's been ignored for a long, long time, which probably may be your situation a little bit, then updating them all at one time can be a big task. I run into that question a lot. So my recommendation is you do it maybe a section at a time, or don't try to eat the whole elephant at one meal, right? Take bites at it. But the problem is if you don't update that, and you're not doing things according to the adopted rules and regulations or adopted policies, now you've got a problem. And if if you do get into a bind, those rules and regulations and policies, cities, its ordinances, they're your foundation to stand on. And if you don't have those and you're not following them, you can be in a lot of trouble, right, over the long term. So you need to go through them periodically and make sure they're still up to date, that you're still following them, and change them. But I would almost do that if I were a water district with your rules and regulations. I would go through them probably annually, if not every 2 years, and make sure everything is still up to date, that you're still doing things the way you're doing it. In cities, it's own ordinances or municipal code if you're codified. That's my first question when I get these calls. A lot of systems assume there's a state law or state regulation, and there isn't. A lot of it is local. It's the local decision-making body that decides on how these things are handled. So a lot of times my first question back to you is, what does your ordinance say? Or what does your policy or rules and regulations say? And most of the time they don't know. Okay. Or if they do, we don't have an ordinance on that. Well, you need to have an ordinance on that. Okay. So because really in Missouri, the local board has a lot of authority to operate their city, their water district. There's a lot of leeway in the statute on how you operate, within the outer boundaries. But it's a lot of times my question back is, what does your ordinance say? And it's amazing to me how many people can't put their hands on those documents. So, yeah. So Sharon, I don't have a real good answer for you, but yeah, I would say every couple of years you need to review it. And if it's way out of whack, take it, you know, a section at a time, get it up to speed and get it updated. Because you don't want to get caught with that. That is your governing document, basically. And so you need to make sure it's up to speed. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else got a question or a concern? No? Everything is good in your world? So let me ask you this little change of subject. We're getting a big, it seems like across the state, everywhere, big wave of COVID again. Are you going back to virtual board meetings, anybody, or has it affected your staffing? I had one city that contacted me the other day. They've got 2 utility guys and they're both in quarantine. So, and they read meters next week. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. So, not fun. So is anybody doing virtual board meetings or having people that?
Now we did our first, what was it? Social distancing board meeting last
Okay.
week. Yeah. And then there's been several of us out for COVID because we've been around it, or one of our family members, we've had to be away, but we haven't gotten it yet.
Close contact type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's finally hit us here, I think. This is, I mean, we had a little bit early on, but this is really our first big wave here in Missouri. So especially rural Missouri, not so much St. Louis, Kansas City, but rural Missouri, this is their first big wave. So big confusion that I've been getting calls on the last couple of weeks is if 1 or 2 of our board members doesn't want to attend in person, but they want to attend in Zoom, do we have to post that on our meeting notice? No, you don't. If you're going to have your meeting technically at your office, okay, that's what your meeting notice says. If you've got 1 or 2 board members that want to Zoom in, either Zoom or Skype or something, video in, they can do that. You don't have to give the link out to the public. It's not, you know, they can participate via video and vote. It's as if they were there. Okay. Now they can call in on the telephone, but they can't vote basically. And that gets a little confusing, but they basically can't vote, but they can participate in the discussion. But I had one call that thought, if we have 1 board member that wants to Zoom, we have to put the link out to the public so the public can participate that way. No, your meeting says if the public wants to participate, they have to come to your meeting. That's what your meeting notice posts, okay? Now, in your meeting minutes, you do need to note that that board member participated via video conferencing, right? And you can say Skype or Zoom or whatever, but the minutes need to reflect how they participated, but you don't have to allow the public to participate that way. You just have to have a way for the public to access the meeting. Now, if you're going totally virtual, you know, nobody's going to be at the office, then yes, you have to post the link so that the public can access the meeting and listen to the meeting, okay? But if you've got 1 board member and everybody else is going to be in the office and your meeting was posted as being at the office, that's all you have to do. That's no different than what you've been doing, okay? So we may get to that point before this is all over again. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else got any questions, insight, suggestions, great ideas? I'm not hearing anything. Okay.
Hey Liz, it's Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. My question is, what's everybody doing for the COVID policies in the office? Like, are you making your customers wear masks or business as usual? Because we're starting to have a lot of outbreaks in our county.
Yeah, you are. You're in Lincoln County. Is that correct, Tina?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tina's in Lincoln County. What are the rest of you seeing? Are you doing mask mandate for your office? Anybody?
No.
No?
We have a separated area that the public comes in with a plexiglass shield and a closed locked door. And so the public's on that side. We're on the opposite side. We kind of social distance within our office. And so, you know, when we're kind of together, we put on masks when we're within the same room of each other. The operators are usually outside, you know, in the field, but, and then just doing a lot of cleaning as soon as someone comes in. But the office isn't really open to the public. For our board meetings, we social distance and wear masks and those things.
Okay. When you say it's not open to the public, Sharon, what do you mean?
Common area, you come in and you can talk through a plexiglass, but the main office is a locked door and the public doesn't come into that. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Anybody else taking precautions at this point? No? Nobody else?
We wore masks at the meeting last night for the first time since this all started. And that really, the reason we did that was because our board president spent 2 weeks in the hospital from having COVID. But here in the office, I'm kind of like Sharon, you know, the guys are usually out. Roger's already had it, of course, so he feels like he's kind of immune now. So we just clean, try to keep the door closed, keep traffic down to a bare minimum. So.
Isn't yours where to Diane, when the public comes in, you're kind of separated from the public?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't walk up to your desk per se, or right. You're separated to kind of what Sharon was talking about. Yeah. That's And Tina, I don't remember if you are or not.
We have, it's closed off with a window, but it's really small. So I added a sign yesterday that said only one customer in the office at a time. Because like they're not 6 feet apart if there's more than one person in there. In the little lobby.
A lot of offices did that. One person in at a time. Please wait outside in the parking lot or whatever, or call this number when you park. Call the office phone. We'll let you know if you can come in. A lot of offices were doing different things to limit the exposure inside the office there. So and if you don't have a drop box, probably be now a good time to get one. If you don't have online bill pay, now would be a good time to do that. You can do that without any cost to the city or the district. There's a lot of third-party payers out there that you can contract with that will process, credit and debit and even ACH payments. If you're not doing that, you need to do that. Now's the time to do that. So, and if you need some names of companies, let me know that do that. But all of those are ways that you can limit exposure to you and your staff. So make sure you can, but you need to do that. Okay. So Tina, doesn't look like everybody, a lot of them are doing major things, but I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. We'll see what happens. Has anybody, let me ask you this. Go ahead, Diane.
Back to when you asked earlier, did anybody have any odd scenarios? So Okay, every year when we have our December meeting, usually we have a Christmas party, but this year, of course, we won't because of the virus and all. But typically, the board members will talk to each employee and they create this really awkward interaction where they ask, is there anything that we need to know about, any problems, within the, work environment with your employee or your fellow employees. And we've talked within the office here that, that's just kind of an uncomfortable question. Me personally, I mean, I'm just one office worker with my two operators here. And every year I just bite my tongue because I honestly just want to tell them, I would just prefer they not ask that question, because what is my option? Do I throw my guys under the bus on things that I think that they're doing wrong and then create a really toxic atmosphere? No, and I just don't know how to tactfully handle that. So, you just kind of smile and, oh no, everything's great. And I'm just not a faker. I really struggle with that. So anybody have any tips or, advice on avoiding that, other than avoiding the Christmas party altogether, which is definitely an option?
Okay. Well, a couple things there, Diane. Number one, public funds can't be used to pay for a Christmas party. So, but that's, we'll leave it at that. Okay.
Well, this is at a board member's house. That's where we typically.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not.
Oh, well then, okay. So that issue isn't a problem, but here's the thing. Again, this is where your board needs training. Those kind of questions need to be done in a formal review process and not at a social event. What you're describing to me is a social event. And for them
let me clarify. Okay, there's the social part. Then the meeting, we go then to a separate room and have the December board meeting.
right.
And within that board meeting, they will take each employee in for their quote unquote, evaluation, or that's where if you're going to get a raise, they'll tell you then. But that's
So
just, even if I felt like there were issues here, all it's going to do then is then they will address it with so-and-so, which will then, there's only 3 of us. So, I mean, so you only have 2 people that would have ratted you out. And
yeah, that's a difficult situation. It still needs to be handled in a formal employee evaluation type setting.
right.
And the other thing is, boy, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah.
And it should be, employee evaluations can be done in closed session. The evaluation part can be. And what's in closed session stays in closed session and never leaves the room, technically. Now, you and I know that that's not always the case. So, your board members better than I do, and that's a difficult one. So depending on the situation and how serious it is and how,
I have a question for Diane.
maybe you don't talk about it. Yeah, bring it up, because you got to consider those ramifications. Tina, go ahead.
Okay, so when they're questioning her, is it just one person, one-on-one, or is it like, because 2 or more is not supposed to be asking her questions about what goes on in the office, or it's technically a meeting during the party. You're not supposed to talk about.
Well, this is within the context of the business meeting.
So they want you to talk about the other people during the meeting part or the party part?
No, it would be during the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. And so during the meeting time, I can't remember if it's executive session. I would have to look back, but that is possible. But what they'll do is there's a certain time then that they'll have me stay and the 2 operators step out. then they'll talk to me, and then I step out and they bring another one in. And so each of us takes our, 10 minutes or whatever with them, where they ask the same questions every year. And
Yeah, so it is kind of an employee evaluation type of
sort of,
situation.
but I try to have my standard, reply rehearsed, that everything's fine. And, I try to practice my acting skills a little bit every year.
Could you guys fill out a form prior and give it to them, like in their packet, that they could look over?
Well, it still is my hang up is, I'm not so upset. I don't think my guys are, terrible people or anything, but no matter whether it's something little that you see or something big, the problem is it's going to ultimately create a toxic work atmosphere, because someone is eventually going to call them out on whatever, one of us has said about the other. You're going to get, well, let's say it was a reprimand. And so then that, I just know how this office works. I don't know how you all's offices work, but ours is so small that it would create a toxic work atmosphere.
Right.
And I just think the board maybe doesn't understand that. I don't know.
Well, I think part of the key to that, again, with only 3 of you, it's small. Everybody knows everybody else's business, right? But the key to that is, when you're replying, is try not to make it personal. They need to understand that you're not there to give them dirt on the other person. You're there to, we have, this situation is occurring, and here's how it causes problems for me. And here's maybe how we can change that process. What do you think? Instead of saying, Joe's not doing his job, try to maybe frame it. And this would take some maybe thinking, frame it in terms of how is it, what is hindering you from doing your job, right? And how do you see maybe a suggestion on remedying that and getting feedback from the board, but try not to make it personal, pointing fingers. Again, make it reflect, I can't, this is hindering me from doing my job. And so how can we resolve that, right? And maybe frame it in that way. And hopefully, though, too, if you have a situation like that, and I know, again, personnel issues are just the worst, but if I were a board member, my first question to you is, have you approached them about how it's creating an issue for you? Have you talked to them about it? And if you're not getting anywhere, then maybe we as a board need to sit down and discuss it. And what do we need to do?
Right.
Maybe try to make sure you don't count pointing fingers, but more as, how can we make operations here better and smoother, and try and go from that direction. Maybe one way to look at it. So, okay. Thanks, Diane. Anybody else? We're 3 minutes over, so we're gonna. Okay, so those of you, if you haven't joined our Facebook page, get on our Facebook page, MRWA Office Professionals. I'm going to be looking for topics for next month, right? We'll do one middle of the month again, and hopefully you guys can join us. And if you know people that aren't in our Facebook group, invite them to join. We've got pretty good following there, so look for the meeting there. Look for our e-newsletter. If you're not subscribed to our e-newsletter, subscribe to it. Go to our website, sign up for our e-newsletter. This will be, dates will be in our e-newsletter also. So, but if you have a topic you'd want to explore or address, send it to me. Email me, text me, call me. Let me know what you want to talk about next month. Okay, we'll do it. Okay. All right. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
We'll see you next month. Okay. Bye.